Hey guys, welcome back. This is the MMA Breakdown. Today we're doing predictions for UFC Fight Night 69, Jedrzejczyk versus Penne, taking place June 20th in Berlin, Germany. And this card, I just really don't care about it at all. I think it's a waste of time. The main event, the title fight, it's relevant. That's great. Really looking forward to seeing Jedrzejczyk again. But to me, this fight is not. It's not a fight that we need a whole event for. For example, the card coming up this weekend, UFC 188, Velasquez versus Verdum. That really isn't a pay-per-view worthy main card, and the rest of the card isn't that good either. But the main event, that's something that is worth paying for a whole event for. But here it's just really a lot of filler, a lot of guys who probably will never make it to the top. But I know everyone loves having an event every weekend and all of these international events, but to me this is really kind of the bottom that the UFC has to offer. And real quick, follow me on Twitter. My link is in the description. I've been getting some followers on there, but I'll be live tweeting during all the events in the future. And let's just converse about fights there. Follow me there, and we'll have some fun. But starting off with the UFC Fight Pass preliminary card at middleweight, Uriah Hall versus Krzysztof Jotko. Uriah Hall stepping in on short notice for Derek Brunson. I was actually looking forward to the original matchup more, but Uriah Hall, fresh off of his loss to Rafael Natal, and I actually thought he lost that fight. I know a lot of people thought he won it. Krzysztof Jotko won his last fight against Tor Troen, got submitted by Magnus Siedenblad in the first round, I believe. Before that, a guy who doesn't really seem to have any really dominant skills. Okay striking and forward pressure, some takedowns and ground control. And Uriah Hall, his hesitancy to pull the trigger and just his lack of urgency really puts him in he really puts himself in a position to lose a lot of these fights that he shouldn't. Like in the Rafael Natal fight, he just let Natal kind of clinch with him, hold him against the fence, and never really pulled the trigger. There's no question that Hall is the far more skilled striker and athletic fighter, far more talented. I'm going to go with Hall here. I just don't think Jotko's striking is refined enough, but I think Hall is at the point where he's susceptible to just lose to anyone because of his lack of urgency. But I'll go with Hall here. But I can't say I'm expecting an impressive performance. Alright, next up at bantamweight, Taylor Lapilus versus Ulka or Yuta Sasaki. I don't know why he has two different first names. But Taylor Lapilus, coming off of his win over Rocky Lee, and that was just a couple weeks ago, a month ago at the Manila Fight Night card. French fighter. Rocky Lee was able to get in on his legs a lot, trying to go for the takedown. I think he got one briefly, but it was mostly Lapilus in control on the feet. Seems to be a decent kickboxer, pretty good athleticism. Yuta Sasaki, though, really impressed me in his debut against Roland Delorme. Right out of the gate, came out darting around the cage, got the takedown and choked out Delorme very quickly and easily. And then his next fight against Leandro Issa wasn't able to have any success on the ground. Issa really schooled him and outclassed him. Won all the scrambles, had his back taken, and choked out eventually. With Lapilus getting taken down by Rocky Lee and getting pressed up against the fence a lot. I just think that Sasaki will be able to get the fight to the ground at some point. If he can't get the fight to the ground, I think Lapilus will have a good advantage on the feet, striking. I've kind of been back and forth on this one, but I'm going to take Sasaki. I think beating Delorme in the way he did was kind of impressive. I don't really know where Lapilus is, how much potential he has, but he struggled a bit with the wrestling offense of Rocky Lee. I think Sasaki can get it to the ground, so I'm going to take Sasaki to win by submission. All right, moving on, a lightweight fight, Piotr Hallmann versus newcomer Magomed Mustafaev. Piotr Hallmann, I haven't really written this guy off. Lost to Gleison Tebow in his last fight. Had a nice win over Yves Edwards where he was losing on the feet early, but was able to come back and take over with the wrestling, dragged Edwards down, and was able to choke him out on the ground. And, had a decent fight with Al Iaquinta. Had a real nice submission win over Francisco Trinaldo. So, tough guy. I think he's well-rounded. Mustafaev, a newcomer, and I just don't know who he is, so I'm not going to pick a fighter here. But I'm not ready to write off Hallmann. I think he still has some potential. All right, moving on to middleweight fight, Scott Askham versus Antonio Dos Santos. Scott Askham lost a decision to Magnus Siedenblad in his debut. I really don't remember how he looked in that fight. I just remember Siedenblad really winning the decision pretty dominantly. I don't remember Askham really doing anything noteworthy. And Antonio Dos Santos had the weird fight with Daniel Sarafian, where I didn't think he was looking bad. I thought it was a pretty even fight. They got into some scrambles on the ground. Nothing significant really happened until Dos Santos dislocated his thumb, I believe. I think that was in the first round, and the fight was called. So I'm going to go with Dos Santos here. Just because he looked okay against Sarafian, and Askham, from what I remember, really didn't do anything against Magnus Siedenblad. So I'm going to go with Dos Santos here. Next up, a featherweight fight, Noad Lahat versus Nicholas Backstrom. Noad Lahat lost by flying knee knockout to Godofredo Castro in his debut, and then got a decision win over Steven Seiler in his next fight. And I didn't think he was really that dominant. To me, didn't look like a UFC level fighter. Landed some shots on the feet, got a few takedowns, but it was really nothing eye-opening. Nicholas Backstrom in his debut thought he had a great win over Tom Niinamaki. Hit him with the knee, dropped him, and then finished him off with the bulldog choke. And I really loved it, but then his next fight got knocked out very surprisingly by Mike Wilkinson pretty brutally, I think in the opening minutes of that fight. So, I don't think we have a really good feel for either of these fighters yet. I'm going to go with Backstrom. It just seems like a far more aggressive fighter, chasing the finish. We've seen the submission ability from him. We've seen Lahat get knocked out by a flying knee. I think Backstrom is aggressive and wild enough. He can pull out a surprise move like that. And Lahat just, not having a very dominant win over Seiler doesn't make me think he's really ready for success in the UFC. So I'm going to take Backstrom here. I think he can finish on the ground. Next up, featherweight fight between Mike Wilkinson and Alan Omer. Alan Omer, I think it's been definitely over a year since he last fought. Lost a decision to Jared Sanders. I thought he looked okay, though. Seemed like a decent striker, decent technical striking, kept an okay pace. But Mike Wilkinson Also got taken down a few times, I think, Omer did. But Mike Wilkinson's just riding the momentum after that big knockout over Nicholas Backstrom, where his striking looked vastly improved. Just his aggression and just kind of his overall, movement on the feet and, his just overall skill as a fighter seemed to be vastly improved from his time on tough smashes, where he did not do anything really impressive. He won a fight on tough smashes. I think got injured and couldn't go on, but then lost by submission to Honey Jason in the first round in his debut, and then was out for over a year before he fought Backstrom again. But I just think Wilkinson is riding the momentum. Obviously, has shown he's got that big power, so I'm going to take him to win this fight. I don't think Omer seemed to be willing to engage to that level in his fight, so got to go with Wilkinson. All right, next up, lightweight Mairbek, Taisumov versus Alan Patrick. This is a good test, I think, for Taisumov. He's looked really good. He's just blowing through guys, but they've kind of been cans. Anthony Christodoulou in his last fight, I think he might have missed. No, he didn't miss weight, but I remember him looking out of shape for that fight. Smashed Marcin Bandil before that. His only losses to Michel Prazeres. But, this guy looks very lethal on the feet. Great kicks and strikes. Another Russian fighter, Albert Tumenov, they kind of have been similar, just rolling through guys, finishing them dominantly in the first round. Just seems like a very high-level and lethal striker. Alan Patrick, though, is going to be a big step up from the other guys he's beaten. Patrick has only had 2 fights in the UFC, had a real quick finish over Garrett Whiteley in his debut, and against John Makdessi. I actually thought he lost that fight. I thought it was a pretty uneventful fight, but I thought Makdessi was able to close the distance, get inside a lot, land from in close. And, it definitely wasn't the showing he had against Garrett Whiteley, but Patrick seems like he has power and I think a more athletic guy than Taisumov, but the way Taisumov has just been destroying guys, I got to think he's the more diverse and lethal striker. I don't think he gets the finish, though, just because Patrick, again, is a higher-level fighter than what he's faced before, but I'm going to take Taisumov to win the decision here. All right, last prelim fight at featherweight, Makwan Amirkhani versus Masio Fullen. I think this is a easy fight for Amirkhani. Masio Fullen, contestant from Tough Latin America, got knocked out by the finalist on the show, Leonardo Morales, who just is coming off of a loss last weekend to Quinones, and then his next fight fought fellow castmate Alex Torres. And it was a really back and forth fight, a really kind of sloppy brawl, and you can just tell, their skills are not UFC level. He was pretty aggressive, kept a good pace, hurt Torres, but got hurt himself several times. Looked like he was close to being finished. But Amirkhani, even though we really haven't seen much of his game at all, other than just coming out and storming Andy Ogle with a flying knee in the opening seconds of their fight, finishing him in 8 seconds. I just have to think a guy who can pull off a move like that against a guy who was in the UFC for a bit of time and can finish like that. I got to think that's going to be way too much for a guy like Masio Fullen, who seems really green and his striking seems pretty average. So I'm going to go with Amirkhani. I think he gets a first-round TKO. On to the main card, which honestly, other than the main event, again, I just really don't care about these fights at all. But at lightweight, Nick Hein versus newcomer Lucas Sajewski. Nick Hein everyone seemed to be really overly excited after his debut against Drew Dober. I didn't think he looked great in that fight. He's kind of getting backed up into the fence and had to circle around the cage with his back to the fence for most of the fight. Kind of had a strong left hand that he seemed to be throwing over and over again. But got bloodied up in that fight, and I thought kind of gassed late. But then against James Vick in his next fight, a fight he lost, but I actually thought he won. He seemed to be much more controlled. Dropped Vick on the feet several times, and off of the knockdown was able to get to crucifix, I think, and control him on the ground. I thought he won that fight and looked a lot better. So I'm interested to see what Nick Hein can do here. But Sajewski, newcomer, so I can't make a pick here. But interested to see Nick Hein. All right. At welterweight, Peter Sabata versus Steve Kennedy. A fight I just don't care about at all. Peter Sabata hasn't fought in over a year now. Fought Pavel Pavlik in his last fight. And it was not a memorable fight at all. Sabata, I think, is a kickboxer. I remember when he fought Amir Sadallah way back in 2010 in the UFC. That was his last fight in the UFC before getting cut. And I thought he looked like a decent kickboxer, competed, I thought, decently well in that fight. And then against Pavlik, won the decision, but, didn't put a beating on him or anything. So that's about all I have to say about Sabata, and I just have no idea how he'll match up against Kennedy. I certainly wouldn't take Sabata just because of his UFC experience, but I really have no idea here. All right, the co-main event at featherweight, Dennis Siver versus Tatsuya Kawajiri. A better matchup, but still, to me, it's just not relevant. And I'm taking Dennis Siver to win big here. I think it would be disastrous if Kawajiri was able to, get the win, even just be competitive. Since he's come to the UFC, I thought his debut against Sean Soriano, it was impressive how he was losing on the feet and seemed to be in a bit of trouble, but was able to get the takedown and then choke out Soriano on the ground. He choked him out unconscious. But then against Clay Guida, it was just a real sloppy brawl. He got dropped in the first round by Clay Guida, which, that's an awful thing. Clay Guida is not a good striker. Got dropped by Guida and out-wrestled pretty much for the rest of the fight. Dennis Siver, I would say, is a pretty good wrestler, maybe not as good as Guida. I think he can take down Kawajiri all day. On the feet, I don't think it should be close. Siver, a dynamic striker with the spinning back kicks and all of that. And Dennis Siver, honestly, I think he's been kind of overrated since dropping down to featherweight. I thought he looked great against Cub Swanson early, and that was kind of his best showing in the weight class. Was beating him on the feet, took down Swanson early, but got overwhelmed later in the fight and got finished. But this guy's fought guys like Diego Nunez and Nam Phan, wasn't able to finish them. Manny Gamburian didn't even look great against Charles Rosa, and pretty much got eaten up by McGregor in his last fight. Everyone, makes such a big deal about this guy's finishing ability, his spinning back kick. But the truth of the matter is that he hasn't finished anybody since 2010, 5 years ago. And, he hasn't been fighting really dangerous guys again like Phan and Nunez. So I'm just not high on Siver to really do anything significant in the weight class. But I think he should steamroll Kawajiri here and get a really dominant win. I think he's capable of finishing him, but I just don't know because Siver hasn't finished anyone in such a long time. All right, next up, the title fight for the women's strawweight belt, Joanna Jedrzejczyk versus Jessica Penne. I like this fight. Again, I just don't think we need to create a whole event of filler just to support this fight. I know it's an international fight and they're trying to open up this market, but I don't know. I'd rather see this. I'd honestly rather see this on a pay-per-view or a Fox card, something like that. But Joanna Jedrzejczyk just looked fantastic against Carla Esparza. Really blew me away. I picked Esparza to win that fight, mostly because against Claudia Gadelha, Jedrzejczyk really struggled to create any space, create any separation. Gadelha was able to get her up against the fence, get in on her legs. Wasn't taking her down a whole lot, but just holding her in the clinch there against the fence. Jedrzejczyk dropped her late, but really couldn't create any space. And then against Esparza, just looked amazing. Her takedown defense looked great. Especially in the middle of the cage, Esparza was was shooting for takedowns, and she wouldn't sprawl, but she would turn and really fight off the takedowns very effectively, and then just picked Esparza apart. Really looked great. And then in her debut against Juliana Lima, I thought looked very good as well. She went the distance in that fight. Got taken down once late, but got right back up, and her kickboxing just looked very clean and technical. Penne, I really liked. I liked what I saw from her on the show. Who did she lose to? I think it was Esparza that she lost to. Give me a second. Yeah, lost to Esparza, dropped a decision. But then beat Randa Marcos in the finale. And, I thought, because she was taken down by Esparza, and Marcos being a wrestler, I thought Marcos would have the edge there. But Penne kind of schooled her on the ground. Not a great striker, and not really a great wrestler, but on the ground, has really good top control, had some reversals against Marcos, got to mount a lot, and really kind of a slick grappler. I don't think she's going to get run over here by Jedrzejczyk like Esparza did, just because I don't think Penne will be as desperate to try to get the fight to the ground and get the takedown. She was willing to strike with Esparza. I don't think she'll be competitive on the feet really, but I just don't think that she's going to be diving for takedowns and then just quitting on the feet. That's pretty much how Esparza lost. But I don't think she's a good enough wrestler really to get Jedrzejczyk to the ground. Also, her fight against Aisling Daly was competitive, but I thought she actually lost that fight as well in the house. But I think Jedrzejczyk is really going to be in control with her striking, fend off the takedowns when Penne attempts them. If it does get to the ground, I could see Penne getting on top, having some success, but I really don't think that's something Penne can do over and over again, get into that position. So I think Jedrzejczyk is really going to dominate, and I'd say a finish, probably third or fourth round. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, those are my predictions for UFC Fight Night 69, Jedrzejczyk versus Penne. Thank you for watching. Please like the video, comment with your thoughts, and subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter. Link is in the description. Check out my predictions for UFC 188 if you haven't done so already, coming up this weekend. And then after this, the week after this, we have the Ultimate Fighter 4 finale, or Tough Brazil 4 finale, Machida versus Romero. I'll have picks for that, although we're not going to know who the finalists are until the week of the fight. So I'll probably hold off on doing predictions for those fights. So what I think I'll do is have my predictions out really early for 189, McGregor versus Aldo. I'll probably have those predictions before Tough Brazil 4, maybe even this week. So be on the lookout for that. But thank you guys. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye.